Hello, movie lovers. Today I'm going to continue on with my trip down memory lane, the films of 1972. And last month I did westerns. This month I'm doing black cinema, and I did Lady Sings the Blues. Today we're going to delve a little bit into black exploitation and discuss a film called Superfly. And Superfly was directed by Gordon Parks Jr. and stars Ron O'Neal as Youngblood Priest. The title, for fly, means something fantastic. Superfly is something even more incredible than fantastic. Um, and in 1972 was the sort of the onset of blaxploitation. There were quite a few films made in that year. 71 is largely considered to be the first year of blaxploitation with Shaft and Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, both made for a tiny, minuscule budget, and both made big profits. Hollywood studios started to take notice. There's a whole urban black audience out there that they can tap into. But Superfly also was a very, very low budget movie. Um, and also in 1972 was the sequel to Shaft, Shaft's Big Score. Just recently, a couple days ago, Criterion announced that Shaft was coming to the Criterion Collection in a 4K UHD. Included amongst the supplements is going to be Shaft's Big Score. And I'm going to include that. This is coming out sometime in June, and I'll include Shaft's Big Score in another genre kind of grouping, probably action movies or something similar. Um, and but Superfly, Youngblood Priest, he is a drug dealer, a successful drug dealer, but he is also dissatisfied with his life. There's no future in it. So he wants to make the proverbial one last score, the big score, and then get out. Of course, this is a staple of Hollywood crime stories and film noir, westerns, and really this film is sort of like a western story. You could transplant this into a western, and it would be a very familiar kind of story. But here we have a power. We have a power structure of what is the white power structure, which is basically, the man, referring to the white man, and in this film, mostly signified by the police. The police are corrupt. The white police are corrupt. We get a lot of from the very first images of the film. We get the New York City street scenes in Harlem, and they're grimy. They almost look sort of bombed out, and New York City in the 1970s, the early 1970s, it wasn't like it was. It hadn't been Disney Times Square, and hadn't been Disney-fied yet, but there was such energy. There was so much energy in New York City in 1972. I used to haunt all the repertory movie theaters in those days, and you could just feel it. You could cut the energy with a knife. And the film is really enhanced by the Curtis Mayfield score. I mean, this is an absolutely great score. The album went up to #1. It had 3 hits: Freddy's Dead, Superfly, Pusher Man, and the score really is sort of a commentary on the movie itself. If you listen closely to the lyrics, the movie is also enhanced by the performance of Ron O'Neal as Youngblood Priest. he was a classically trained actor, Shakespearean. That was kind of unusual for blaxploitation movies. And a lot of historians of the age believe that Superfly is the best of the blaxploitation movies, and certainly one of the reasons is the Curtis Mayfield score for sure, but also Ron O'Neal's performance. I mean, this is a real actor, and some of the I was looking through because there's probably about 14, 15 other blaxploitation movies that came out in 1972, and I noticed they were football stars, were major stars. Bernie Casey, who had played for the 49ers and the Rams. Fred Williamson, who was played for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was known for the hammer. He would clothesline opposing receivers around the neck and giving them serious injuries sometimes. And that was what his maneuver was so violent that the NFL banned it. And of course, Jim Brown, he was in Gun. I think he was in another movie that is sort of grouped in with blaxploitation. Jim Brown had already become a movie star and made a lot of big budget movies. And I saw what was it, Gun? I think it was called, or Back Gun. I saw that a couple weeks ago. That being a very low budget movie, like Superfly. And then we have some really good performances in this film too. Carl Lee as Priest's best friend and partner, and he was Carl Lee was the son of Canada Lee. If you remember, if you have some knowledge of 40s and 50s movies, Canada Lee was in quite a few films. And then the other terrific supporting performance by Julius Harris as Scatter, and Scatter had been Priest's mentor from the time that Priest was a little boy, and had set him up in the drug business. But now he owns a restaurant. He doesn't want to get involved anymore with cocaine. This is a movie about cocaine, not about heroin, but cocaine. And but Priest, says, just one more. I've got to get out of this business, and I can make a big score. I've got a big family of street pushers. So eventually he does give in. And the movie, because there's so much drug use in this film, and it got a great deal of criticism, as well as other blaxploitation movies from the black establishment, like the NAACP. And its focus on drugs, and but the film has, many of these blaxploitation movies do, but especially Superfly, it gives a kind of social context to it. Is that if a black man wanted to become really successful in the world he was living in, there wasn't much lived the so-called American dream. There wasn't much opportunity. Capitalism held no entryway for black men to achieve some sort of success. This was pretty much it. The film was financed by Sig Shore, and the whole financing of movies like this is all low-budget movies. It's really a story unto itself, and there's a real good documentary, including this is a Warner Archive. They have some good supplements on here, and one was from, I guess, the DVD in 2004, 2005, where many of the surviving participants in the movie, unfortunately, Ron O'Neal died and was they were before this documentary was made, as well as Gordon Parks Jr. died in a helicopter accident. Curtis Mayfield also died in 1990. He had a terrible accident when he was on stage and was crippled in a wheelchair the last 9 years of his life, but he did continue to make music. But we get a lot of the other participants in it, the screenwriter, and Sig Shore, the producer, and he had been this was his first, I think, producing effort. He had been bringing foreign films, dubbed foreign films, to America, but he also brought 400 Blows and Hiroshima Mon Amour was films that he released. He brought from Europe to America, but he wanted to make a movie of which he could be the producer. And of course, it would have to be a low budget. He didn't have much money, and so they had to finance it. Gordon Parks Sr., the director of Shaft, and the father of the director of Superfly, he invested in it. They were very creative. They got some Harlem dentists that were doing very well to invest in it. And of course, the movie made a lot of money. I mean, I think the budget may have been $300,000, and I think the overall gross turned out to be maybe 30 times that. And we also get we get something that I didn't comment on in the supplements. That was the costume designer, and the costumes in this movie are so flamboyant. And oftentimes when you see these movies from the past and you look at it, like, how could people wear these things? And they drove around in cars instead of horses like they would in the Old West. They drove around these fantastic looking cars, and Priest drives around in this Cadillac Eldorado, and it's been tricked up, as the nomenclature was, with a Rolls Royce looking front, and and usually this would work against the film, but I don't really think it works against the film in Superfly, because this is it is a moment in time that is, long since passed away, 50 years, but it was such a vivid moment in time, and it had a vitality to it, and this vitality is expressed in the flamboyant clothes, the Borsalino hats. It's just some amazing, the shoes, some amazing costumes, and these were real costumes. I mean, some of the actors actually wore their own clothes, and some wore stuff that they got off the rack. And the commentary is by Dr. Todd Boyd, who is a professor at the University of Southern Cal, and he is known as the Notorious PhD. And I picked up his book, one of his books. He's written a lot of, he's written several books on black pop culture of the 1970s, and this one is the Superfly 70s, a connoisseur's journey through the fabulous flicks, hip sounds, and cool vibes that defined a decade. He talks about all the movies in the blaxploitation, all the music, all the social context of where these films came. Highly recommended book by the good doctor, the Notorious PhD. Okay, so that'll end up this video. And my first two videos have had a strong focus on the world of drugs, but the next movie, I think the next three movies, where we get away from drugs, and I'm going to do Sounder, I think, next. We got Buck and the Preacher, and so there'll be 6 movies altogether focusing on the black cinema of 1972. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who listened to me. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. You guys take care.